Hello, everyone. Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry.
What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judy, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the 14-Yard NFL Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another Full 10 Yards NFL podcast. Today, I'm your host, Sam Moores, and I'm joined by fellow Full 10 Yards member and co-host of the Go for Two podcast as well, Liam Horsley. Welcome, Liam. How are you doing today, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. Happy to be on with you. I've done many with Sean, so now I get to have you in the host chair. So yeah, it should be good. Get to talk about some good divisions tonight, which should be fun.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, today we're back for another 2023 preview podcast, this time looking at both the AFC and the NFC West, which, I mean, have two of the four conference championship finalists from last season. And, I mean, for those of you expecting the NFC South and AFC South today, by the way, sorry, it's coming soon. It's just I've been ill this week, or the week just gone, so I've had to rearrange it. So it's coming in a few days' time, don't you worry about it. And Sean will be back for that one as well, as you mentioned. He's a regular on the podcast, even though he's no longer the host. So it's always good to have Sean on. Onto the AFC and NFC West. After a ton of movement, the AFC West was the talk of the last off-season. It was, this is the most loaded division of football, pretty much. But this year, it's actually the turn of the NFC West for different reasons, because you've got the 49ers QB situation, you've got Seattle, be on the up potentially, and then you've got the Rams and Cardinals, who are, there's not much to say about them really, positive, to be honest with you. But just before we get into this podcast, I would like to remind everyone that for the first time ever, Full 10 Yards are hosting an event to kick off the 2023 season. On the 10th of September, the first Sunday of the NFL season, you can join our team and fellow UK fans too in watching every game at Felsons in Birmingham. Individual tickets are £10 and come with a free drink too, so it's a great bargain. That's half your ticket paid for already if you want to get a drink. And you can also purchase a ticket along with our season preview guide while stocks last. There's not many left, so and that's for £15 as part of a bundle as well. So even better value for money there too. And both me and Liam have written for the guide this year. We spoke about it last podcast, how me and Charlie have taken a big bulk this year, but almost half the guide are our writing. So but it's a great thing to do, this guide. And I mean, it's for UK fans by UK fans, and you get the lowdown of the 2023 season ahead, really, don't you?
Yeah, and it looks good as well. We've obviously seen it as well now with the kind of finished article that Josh has sent everyone. It looks really, really good as well. So yeah, definitely go out and buy it. Give you a bit of reading before what we're now 3 or 4 weeks away from the season. So plenty of time to go through it. So yeah, it's a really good piece of work. And I wrote about a lot of the teams we'll speak about tonight. So should be good.
Yeah, there we are. Visit www.full10yards.co.uk to buy your ticket and your guide now. And I hope you do, because it helps us out. It really does. But anyway, on to the podcast now. As with the other two podcasts, we'll start with the AFC, and this time the Denver Broncos. We'll go by alphabetical order again, who have certainly been in the news recently with everything with Sean Payton and Nathaniel Hackett. Sean Payton has been brought in to fix Russell Wilson, who wasn't great last year. We'll get into it now. Obviously, Sean Payton calling Nathaniel Hackett's 1 year as head coach the worst coaching job in the NFL last season. It's fair to say that this season's success really rests on Russell Wilson's play, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think that's the main question: is it, can Payton kind of revive Russ's career? I was doing some good reading on it anyway, in terms of some analytical stuff. That's kind of my background, and Russ has been on decline for probably 3 years. And then all of a sudden last year, he's gone like a massively steep decline. Some of that offensive line, some of that wide receiver injuries, but a lot of that, unfortunately, coaching and his personal play. I'm not sure how much he's going to be able to do. I think the run game will be a lot better, which will help Russ. But I am a little bit worried. He just takes too many sacks now, and he's just not accurate down the field like he used to be. He was always known for those kind of deep bombs, wasn't he, to Tyler Lockett, to DK Metcalf. But last year, that kind of fell off a cliff, and I'm a little bit worried about it. They've lost a couple of players as well to injury on the offense. So yeah, for me, I wouldn't say he's done. I think he'll be better than last year, but I don't think we'll see anywhere near the heights we saw of Russ in Seattle.
Yeah, it's got to be better than last year, because they were the worst offense, points per game last year in the NFL. So you can only go up. Let's be real.
Yeah, I think he was the second bottom in explosive play rate as well. So like all the plays that they were succeeding on were just kind of dump offs, 3rd and 15 and getting 7 yards. It's just like their success rate was really, really bad on offense. And they've spent a lot of money, haven't they, on the offensive line this year to try and make it better.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be more of a run game thing than it is Russ, to be honest. I just think that he's just not the same player he was. But Peyton's a very good coach, so I'd be surprised if they were worse. But I don't think they'll hit the heights maybe some fans want them to. I don't think on offense.
See, from watching the first episode of Hard Knocks and the second one is out in the UK tomorrow night, I could tell just from that Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson was never going to watch anyway, because Hackett has a very clear personality. You get some of Aaron Rodgers because they're so sort of bold. When Russell Wilson doesn't have a personality at all, really, does he? So it's kind of like people make fun of the fact he's just sort of like a bit of a robot, really. Like, so I just from that point alone, I don't think it was ever going to work.
No, but yeah, I agree. Mr. Unlimited wasn't going to work there, I don't think, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, the team in general, they're still incredibly talented. They were, last year we were talking about they could potentially win the division, maybe pick the Chiefs without Tyreek Hill. I picked them to win the division last year, which looked really stupid a couple of weeks in, but I mean, I won't be this year, just because I don't think they will. But Mahomes and the Chiefs proved, and Andy Reid proved that they can win with anyone at wide out last year. So you can't really look beyond them. But I mean, they got super banged up last year as well, because and they've already lost Tim Patrick as well for a second straight season. It's not great. If one of Courtland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy go down, it gets even worse. Which I mean, and also history tells us that is entirely possible because they both have not great injury histories. It's a great opportunity for second round rookie Marvin Mims, but if one of Sutton or Jeudy go down, then Russ will, it won't look good for him. And I mean, they might start to have questions really, because that's what Peyton's been brought in to do. And if your receivers go down, then that's not going to help him, is it?
Yeah, they're in a weird situation as well, because all off season there's rumors around both those players. It was kind of like Tim Patrick's the prototypical down the field receiver that Sean Payton loves. Obviously traded up for Marvin Mims in the draft, but then the other two, it's like who they're going to get traded. Like Courtland was first, then all of a sudden, okay, they don't want, there's too much for Sutton. It's a first round pick. They might trade Jerry Jeudy for a second. That was kind of the other rumor that was going around. So it's huge years for those individual players for their career. But like you said, they both have injury history. Jerry Jeudy last year was just constantly banged up. And I think some of that's the style. When you just get thrown 50-50 balls down the field against corners and you have to leap up and go for these crazy catches, especially for Courtland Sutton, your injury rate is a lot higher than someone who just open in the middle of the field and then can get down and kind of get to the next down. So yeah, it's a huge season for them. There's not really much behind them. You've got Kendall Hinton there, the QB wide receiver legend that everyone loves.
His name will always be remembered for that COVID game.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, but I do actually quite like the tight end room, and obviously Sean Payton's historically.
Adam Chapman as well.
Adam Chapman. Dulwich, and they got Chris Manhertz, who's more of a blocking tight end, but Sean Payton loves that. Like, he wants guys out there that can block and catch the ball. So yeah, I think the tight ends will help, but yeah, huge year for those wide receivers. I think they're both, Jerry Jeudy will be a free agent soon. So yeah, they need to have good seasons, but you're right. If either of them go down, then apart from Marvin Mims fantasy owners, it's not looking good for Denver.
Yeah, the other guys you got in the receiver room, you've got the likes of Lil Jordan Humphrey and Marquez Callaway, just New Orleans guys that Sean Payton's worked with before, but that didn't really make him mark that when he was with him before. Running back, it looks like Javonte Williams' recovery has gone better than expected. I think Sean Payton said he might play in the preseason, which I think is nuts, but we'll see. They added Samaje Perine as well from the Bengals as a change of pace back too. I like that because it takes pressure on Williams, but it's good to see that his health is in the right point because he was so good when he was healthy. Before he got injured last year, obviously the year before as well.
Yeah, it'd be a quick recovery as well, wouldn't it, for that level of injury? So I'm with you. I wouldn't play him in the preseason, but Sean Payton is an old school coach. He may not actually play him. That's another typical Payton thing to do, is to not tell the media the truth. But he is old school, so it would not shock me if he played. But yeah, that's a good one too there. And even Tyler Badie, quite liked out of college, very, very fast running back. Someone that Payton will probably use in the pass game. So yeah, I actually quite like the running back room. Perine is good enough to play if Javonte doesn't play the first few weeks, but all signs is that Javonte will be back for week one, which is very impressive. He looked great when he was fit, didn't he, last year?
Yeah, and you mentioned the offensive line earlier. They added Mike McGlinchey from San Francisco, Ben Powers as well on the offensive line. It wasn't great last year. Garrett Bowles, the left tackle, got hurt. This year, the offensive line should they stay healthy, be a lot better, and could help protect Russ as well.
Yeah. This is I actually quite like some of the wide receivers, but I'm not sure about this room. They spent a lot of money in the offseason. Like Mike McGlinchey is very expensive. He's like second highest paid right tackle in the league now. Very much run blocking. If you look at the names on this list, like Quinn Miners as well in college, run blocking. Lloyd Cushenberry, run blocking. Ben Powers is a huge guard from Baltimore last season, run blocking. So for me, if they run the ball a lot, the offensive line will probably look great. But if they're down 14 and they've got to throw it, I'm a little bit worried. So yeah, I think I can understand why they've done it, but I'm a little bit worried about the names on the actual roster in terms of the offensive line. But like we said earlier, you have to try and protect Russ, and maybe they think that run the ball a lot with this offensive line is going to do that. But I am worried about them from a pass block perspective.
Well, it makes sense though. If your best player on offense is a running back, you may as well use him. As gone on to the defensive side of the ball, it's a nice defense. It always has been. They've got Vance Joseph, the former head coach, going back this time as DC. He's a good veteran play caller. We've seen like with Miami and Arizona. He's been about, and they've got one of the best secondaries in the league as well. I'm excited to see what Patrick Surtain looks like this year. Now he's sort of established himself as one of the NFL's top corners. Hopefully he continues that way too.
Yeah, definitely. Him and Sauce Gardner probably battling it out, which is crazy for third year and second year player.
That's so young.
That's 2 corners. Yeah. Speaking from experience, I haven't mentioned this yet, but I'm a Chiefs fan, so obviously playing this division, and he's a great corner. One of the only corners last year, I think, who could even guard Travis Kelce for a rep. It felt like at times. So between him and Justin Simmons, it's one of the best safeties in the AFC and definitely in the division, just because that secondary is good. Even Caden Stearns, who I actually quite took in the same draft as Surtain. He was good last season. He'll probably start for them this year. So yeah, it's a very, very good secondary, which I think helps them in this division because the team like to throw the ball around. So.
I mean, you mentioned you're a Chiefs fan. They also added a Frank Clark in the offseason, who may have a bigger role now than they thought he would do when he was signed, because Baron Browning's on pup really at the moment with a knee injury. So he'll start probably alongside Randy Gregory. They need pass rush. Obviously, Gregory got hurt last year in week 4 and played a few games towards the end of the season. But again, we're just saying the Broncos players got hurt. If these players are on the field, they can do well. They could potentially reach the playoffs, but I can't see them winning the division, and they're like a wild card team. I think. I don't know if you feel the same.
Yeah, well, signing Frank Clark when you've got a list of injuries is not great. That man is often injured. I'm worried about the pass rush. So for me, I don't know if they're even a wild card team. I actually love Sean Payton. He's one of my favorite coaches. So I'm even more down on them. But yeah, 7 wins, maybe 8 wins.
Wow.
I think if they got 9, I think to get in the AFC wildcard, you need 10 wins for me.
Yeah. So
I'm just worried they're not going to get 10 wins. But I think they'll be much better than last year, and it'll be the first year where then you say, right, the year after, their fans will, in 2 years, they'll be saying, let's go win the division. That's how good he is as a coach. But I'm not sure they're quite there yet this year.
Yeah, and ultimately you got the Chiefs in the division as well, so it's so hard to win it in the first place. A team that have been looking like they could win the division, but in true Chargers fashion, don't. The Los Angeles Chargers they're out to win a playoff game. They need to this year, because after the collapse in Jacksonville last year in the wildcard round, that has put Brandon Staley on the hot seat more than he was before in the first place anyway. And he's probably gone if they don't make a run in the postseason, to be honest with you, because you have Justin Herbert. You have to start maximizing Justin Herbert. Kellen Moore's been brought over from the Cowboys to do that. But the questions have to be asked from this Chargers team. What is the problem? Because they should be winning games. And is it Herbert? Is it Staley? We'll know more this season.
I'm pretty sure it's not Herbert. I'm a bit of a Herbert apologist, bit of a Herbert fan. I think he's like, Bengals fans hate me, but I think he's the second best quarterback in the league. That's how good I think he is. But I don't know if it even is Staley. Like, we've been saying this for how many years with them. Do you know what I mean? Especially the injuries. I know this year they've made a massive point. I don't know if you've seen, but they've completely changed all their doctors. They can change all their physios. They've completely changed their whole rehab center. So they obviously think injuries is the main issue, and I would probably say it's one of the main issues. But yeah, you're right. He's on the hot seat. I think if they don't, I probably agree with you. If they don't win a playoff game, he's definitely gone. If they don't make the playoffs, he'll be that coach that's fired the night of the game, just because they've spent a lot of money on this team, and obviously even more with that huge Herbert contract. So yeah, he's firmly on the hot seat, and they've kind of got a guy in Kellen Moore ready to take over if they want him, because he is seen as the next big thing in terms of OC. So yeah, for me, this is a massive year for Staley. What do you think about him? Do you like him as a coach? Because obviously he's a defensive guy, and their defense is constantly an issue since he's been there. So
well, that's the thing, because the scheme is the desired scheme that everyone wants in the NFL. It's that sort of Fangio style thing that it gives like the West Coast offense problems. You saw that with the Dolphins last year. The Chargers were their toughest opponent, I'd say, because of what Brandon Staley did against McDaniel's offense. But it's I mean, obviously it's the analytics in it. It's they're constantly going for it on fourth down, even when you're on the 25-yard line in your own half. Like it's that has sort of given him a bit of a bad rap. It's interesting because, like I said, he is a defensive coach, and his defense has been trash the last couple of years. So that's the thing, really. And
and obviously he stuck by Lombardi as well at OC, didn't he, last year, halfway through the year, and everyone could see that wasn't working. He was just throwing like 2-yard outs and stick on third down every third down, and you could just see like this offense isn't working. Like it's a good offense because of how great the quarterback is, but it's not explosive enough to win NFL games at the level they need to. But he just wouldn't get rid of him. So I think my worry is similar to yours. It's more of like his judgment rather than his defense. I think his defense could be good, but it's the other things that worry me. I actually love going for it on fourth down. And as a Chiefs fan, literally first game of the season, they could have gone for it on 3 or 4 fourth down, and he punted. And I was almost like, after 1 year, the media's completely scared him into changing his whole thing. Yeah. And then it got to the last 4 weeks of the season, he started going for it on his own 25 again. I'm like, I think he lost the plot when it comes to his decisions on fourth down. So yeah, but I actually like him. But most of the media really don't like him. Like you can tell, can't you? Every podcast I listen to, they think he's done after this year. So.
Yeah. See, I mean, you mentioned sticking with Joe Lombardi halfway through the year last year. His offense was so conservative; it was painful to watch. Really, for me, I'm a little bit lower on Herbert than you are, but I still got him like 5th in the league. I think I think he has all the tools to be the best quarterback in the league. Everything, But from my opinion, he just hasn't got that winning. He hasn't got the it to win games on his own, like we see Joe Burrow do, like we saw Patrick Mahomes do. We see other QBs. I've not seen him put a team on his back and win a game in the fourth quarter that often, like other QBs do. That's my only thing. Because with this offense, you should be achieving more than he has, but it's just whether the situation is that bad or that's just my thing. But look, ultimately, I still think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's got another receiver now in Quentin Johnston as well. They drafted at TCU. He's assurance as well. If one of Mike Williams or Keenan Allen go down like they did last year, you got Josh Palmer as well. They're like big receivers. They're all, other than Keenan Allen, they're all absolutely massive. But and after the trade request as well, they came to an agreement with Austin Eckler. So he's certainly got the weapons. The offensive line worries me. Rashawn Slater has to stay healthy, obviously. You've got Zion Johnson as well there, but the offense, Herbert has got all the tools. It's just hopefully Kellen Moore can put something together where he can win a game in the playoffs. That's what we're looking for this year.
Yeah, all the talk is they want to bomb it down the field. That's why they brought Kellen Moore in. All the talk in camp is they're throwing it down the field. So we won't know till week 1, week 2, week 3 when we start watching the offense more. But it sounds like they're just going to go bombs away, which it makes the Quentin Johnson signing a little bit odd because you think they'd go for more pure speed. But he's so good with the ball in his hands. If they get the ball to him in 20 yards down the field, it could easily be a 50-yard play. That's how good he is with the ball in his hands. So, yeah, I'm actually a bit higher on the offensive line as well. And I just look at it as the whole offense as a whole. And it's just like, if this isn't a top 5 offense, then yeah, maybe I am wrong about Herbert because, like you said, he's got all the tools. And Kellen Moore, we'll see. But yeah, he's got all the tools he needs. So yeah, their offense should be great.
That's the thing. I think I demand so much out of Justin Herbert that I want him to be that good, and he's just not shown me that he's Mahomes or Burrow yet. That's my thing.
Yeah.
The defense is getting all its stars back. You got Joey Bosa. He was out for a lot of last year. He's back to form a scary pass rushing duo with Khalil Mack. J.C. Jackson. What would he look like last year? He got beat all over the place. Before he got injured. Yep. Signed a massive contract from New England, where he had a great season before. And they got run over all the time last year. The 5th worst run defense. They've added Morgan Fox on the interior. They've added Eric Hendricks at linebacker 2 to help fix that issue. Yeah, they've got to stop the run.
Yeah, and the problem is, I don't know if this kind of laughs in the face of me talking about their getting a better physio department, better health, better all this stuff, because 2 of their nose tackles are injured already. Like, you've got Austin Johnson, whose job is to stop the run. He's on PUP. Otto Igbonio, he was on first down reps in camp. He's injured as well. And then Sebastian Joseph Day missed 2 days as well. So it's like already at that position, they're injured. But I agree with you. They need to stop the run. Teams like the Chiefs figured that out. A team that passes it non-stop, when they play the Chargers, they run it because they're not. Andy Reid's not stupid. He knows if we can run it, we can bring that defense up, and then we can throw it over the top of people like JC Jackson, like you said. So yeah, it's all about stopping the run and keeping defensive ends healthy, because after kind of Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, it's very narrow on the depth chart. So if either of them get injured, which obviously they're older players, then the depth chart is a little bit of a worry. If you look at the whole defense, the first string's great, but after that, it's not the most deepest. That's what happens when you pay everyone on offense. So,
yeah, there is a caveat to that. So yeah, the Chargers, they're really, really good. You know, on paper, whether they actually are good or not is the other question. But you've got to get in the wild card round this year and potentially win a playoff game. I don't think they'll win the division, but you've got to go to someone else's building and win a game. Especially if it's,
I agree.
The Jags again, which it could be.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, that'd be quite funny if it was a rematch. But yeah, this whole division has a super hard schedule, so it's not going to be easy to make the playoffs. But I think they'll probably be one of the teams that they're in the playoffs. They're just too good. I think Herbert's too good, and their stars are too good. So yeah, I think they'll be a playoff team this year.
And on to a team that should make the playoffs. Your Kansas City Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champions. They're looking to go back to back and become the first Super Bowl winners to do that since the 2005 Patriots. They were counted out last offseason, like I said earlier, after using the likes of Tyreek Hill, but quickly found their way on offense midway through the season. And by the end of the season, they were the 1 seed yet again. It feels like they always will be as well with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And I mean, they are the epitome of a rare combination that leads to a sort of dynasty-like run, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I know Mahomes gets a lot of praise, and I think he's the best quarterback ever. But Reid, I think people have started in the last year to probably realize, because to do what he did on offense with that wide receiver room, because people forget how injured they were as well. Like in the playoffs, Marcus Kemp was wide receiver 2 against the Bengals, and they still beat the Bengals. Like, I know people talk about some of the plays, but some of the flags. But Andy Reid's great, and he's obviously, from a fan perspective, he's pushing it in camp so much this year, like pure aggression. I don't know if you've seen the stories. Obviously, Travis Kelce ended up getting into fights nonstop.
I've seen a bit.
Yeah, they basically said that the year they won the Super Bowl and then went back, even though the offensive line kind of all got crippled in the last few weeks, and I think that's why we lost to Brady. Reid and Mahomes have both said the last 5-6 weeks of the season, the team was just not focused. It was easy. It was like, oh, we're going to win another Super Bowl. You can tell this year that Andy Reid's really, really focused. So yeah, I'm hoping for a great season, obviously.
You've lost a few starters again, but I mean, you're still immensely talented, and you've had other players as well. You're breeding in new talent too. You're hoping the likes of Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Sky Moore have a strong second season. You swapped Orlando Brown for Jawan Taylor and Donovan Smith as well, the 2 tackle positions. How do you think the line will look? Because obviously it's different to what it was last year. Jawan Taylor in Jacksonville was hit and miss from what you read, but it's just like, what do you think?
Yeah, Jawan Taylor's great against the pass, not great against the run, which is ideal for Mahomes, because we're going to throw the ball 35 times a game probably. But I'm one of the few people, I think, who thinks the offensive line will be better. I am not an Orlando Brown fan. Like, any big game, Bengals, Bills, Eagles, he just gets pushed back into Mahomes' lap all the time for me. So Donovan Smith might be as good, might be slightly worse, but I think Jawan Taylor at right tackle will be good enough to make the line better, because Andrew Wiley, right tackle last year, he's just not a good player. Like, he's getting killed in pre-season for the Commanders already. Yes. And he looked good for us, but apart from the Eagles, we've got the best offensive line coach in the league. Andy Reid used to play offensive line. The whole offense is built, like, if he can't be a good offensive lineman for us, it's like, that's a bit of a worry. So yeah, I think the line will be better as long as Donovan Smith doesn't do what he did last year and give up penalty after penalty. I think it'll be good, because that interior is, I'm sure you probably know yourself, is elite with Tooney, Creed, and Trey. It's probably the best in the league, to be honest. Now the Eagles are a bit younger,
and it's not like Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith are, veterans or anything. They're still at the very start of their careers.
Yeah.
They're on rookie deals, and you got the interior is great. It's just the exterior that you do have questions about. But like I said, they're paying a lot of money to Jawan Taylor, so
Yeah,
they must see something. On the defense side of the ball, you signed Charles Omenihu from San Francisco. He's been banned for 6 games since, as a replacement for Frank Clark and adding extra pass rush. He's banned for the first 6 games, which is a great opportunity for your rookie Felix Anudike-Uzomah. What do you reckon about the D-line this year? Obviously, Karlaftis, you got Chris Jones who has got his holdout. What happens there is another thing as well. What do you reckon?
Yeah, definitely the worry of the team. I think the secondary could be really good, the young guys, but the pass rush is definitely a worry. I really like George Karlaftis. I loved him in the draft and couldn't believe he went as far as he did. I wasn't a big Felix fan. Didn't want him in the first round, but he actually looked pretty good in preseason week 1. But that's just preseason. But yeah, this is the issue. A lot of the rumors are as soon as Chris Jones' contract gets done, they'll be calling Carlos Dunlap, who obviously won a Super Bowl with us last year. He would come in and start a defensive end next to George or opposite George. And then when Charles Menu's back, he'd probably play inside with Chris. I think then your pass rush looks good, but that needs Chris Jones to sign a deal, Charles Menuhu to be okay after sitting down for 6 weeks, and then us to sign Dunlap. So at the moment, I'm a bit worried about it. My personal view is I don't think the extension gets done with Chris. I think he wants too much money, and the team won't pay it. But I'd say most Chiefs fans think it might get done, but we'll see. If it's not done in the next 10 days, 2 weeks, it won't happen because Andy Reid won't let this situation go on past that last week in preseason. He'll say either you turn up or that's it. You're not playing at all. So, I don't think it'll get done personally, which worries me. But yeah, I think the pass rush is where you could see the start of the season, maybe the defense give up a lot of points whilst they're still kind of finding their feet.
Well, obviously the Chris Jones situation comes when pretty much every young defensive tackle is getting paid. The likes of Quinnen Williams, Dexter Lawrence, you've got Jeffrey Simmons, you've got Christian Wilkins coming up next. He's holding in Miami. He's had a dominant first half of training camp, and now he's saying, "No, you pay me. I'm not participating in drills." So, he's not the only one. It's a very crowded market, and he wants $30 million a year. So, be interested to see if he gets that. But that's what he's asking for.
Well, I think that's the problem actually, is that they felt like Simmons and who's the guy from Washington? I can't remember.
Daron Payne.
Daron Payne.
Yeah.
The Chiefs basically, it's come out. They actually thought they'd get more. So then it would basically mean that the Chiefs couldn't lowball Chris because they're on 27 a year. We're going to have to give you 28, 29, 30. It's just the way, because they all got 23 to 25 and a half. The Chiefs are like, okay, we'll offer 26, but obviously Chris is like, I want 31. So there's a bit of a bigger gap now. So some people think that they actually thought the younger guys would get more money, and it's kind of put Chris in a difficult position. But yeah, it's come out today that from one source that he wants to be the highest paid, which is crazy. He is better than Aaron Donald last year, but obviously Aaron Donald's got 5 years before that of being the greatest defensive player I've probably ever seen play. So I just don't think the Chiefs will pay whatever it is, 31 and a half a year. But yeah, we'll see. I think he'll still play for the Chiefs this year, but it'll just be a 1 year kind of contract year, probably play great and then get paid a gazillion dollars next year in free agency from someone else probably.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens there. You mentioned the secondary. Obviously, you got the likes of Trent McDuffie and other corners, young corners who stood out last year. You've in at safety, you've lost Juan Thornhill, but I think he's a player you can sort of afford to lose. Safety is one of those positions that you can afford to go cheap. We've seen the likes of the Eagles do it last year, for example. They're doing it again this year. So I think that's a Terrell Edmonds, like a $1 million deal, a $1 million a year deal. That's safety's a position you can go cheap on, right? So he's moved on to the Browns. Juan Thornhill has. Do you think he'll be a big loss or?
No, so I'm not a big fan. So he was great in his first year, did his ACL, and he just could never get back healthy. So last year he was great against the run. He kind of really developed against the run, which I think really suits Cleveland's defense, actually. But for us, because teams are passing against us so much, he was a little bit weak in that area. So it's not a huge loss as long as Brian Cook can fulfill his potential. He was good in college, good last year, but had a very, very dodgy week 1 preseason, which I don't want to judge everything on 3 drive, but yeah, we'll see. I don't think he'll be a loss. We've got Chamari Connor, actually, we took in this year's draft in the 4th round. He has looked great in camp. He's a kind of corner safety hybrid, typical Spags player.
Yes.
I just think that there's a few there that could kind of fill that gap. But the one to watch for any neutral is L'Jarius Sneed's been injured for like 10 days now in camp with a swollen knee. And that doesn't sound good when it's been this long. He missed 5 games last year for the same reason. I think he'd be a big miss for the Chiefs if he was out. But yeah, the safety room I'm not too worried about.
There we are. And with the Chiefs, everyone's picking them to win the division, and you can see why, because reigning champions, they're looking to go again. They've not got, I reckon probably about the same talent-wise as last year. You've got the receivers, which I forgot to mention we're going to now. Obviously, you've got Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who solid as ever, always that kind of reliable option. You've also got Kadarius Toney, who took off at the end of last year after moving over from the Giants trade. He's expected to have a huge role, but it's just whether he can stay healthy. That's the thing, really, isn't it, with him? And you've also got Justin Ross, who some thought would never even play in the NFL. Obviously, stand-up receiver at Clemson. He's been impressive in camp too, and he got injured, but he was back in practice today. I saw he carted off yesterday, but he was back, so I think that's looking all right. But yeah, the receiver room is looking better than it was last year as well, which is a great news for the league, really. If you want Mahomes to go again.
Yeah. Juju was pretty good last year on third down, but I think people don't realize how injured he was. He missed a lot of time again, because there's even games, if you look at the stats, I was like, oh, he only missed X amount of games, but he left 2 games after one drive. So like, he was a good player, and would I prefer to have him probably like over Justin Watson? Definitely, but he was just never healthy last year. So I'm kind of with you that I think the ceiling's higher on the offense because of the wide receivers. But it's just risky, isn't it? Got a year 1 player, a year 2 player, Richie James, who's great last year for the Giants, but has only ever been good 1 year in his life. Kadarius Toney's always injured, and Valdes-Scantling, obviously a bit of a deep ball merchant in Green Bay. So the floor's probably lower, but I think the ceiling's quite high, and I am one of the people on the Justin Ross hype train. Yeah. So yeah, and I've also bought a Kadarius Toney jersey to my sins, and he got injured 3 days later. So yeah, we'll see. I think the offense will be good as always, but I think if you're a fantasy football player, you're going to hate the Chiefs wide receiver room, because I think it'll be someone different every week, to be honest.
Yeah, don't go drafting anyone. Maybe not early anyway.
MVS maybe MVS late, just because he's going to play every single time. Like, he's going to be the starter in every game. So
yeah, there you go. One receiver who you can draft early is Devontae Adams for the Raiders. What are they? They're some of the best players in the NFL at key positions like receiver. You got Max Crosby on the edge. You got Colton Miller at tackle. But many believe they're in contention for the number 1 overall pick, because the rest of the roster, bar Josh Jacobs, is not great at all, really. And I mean, Josh Jacobs might not even play this year. He's refusing to sign the franchise tag. He wants $10 million a year. He wants a multi-year contract. He did lead the league in rushing yards last year after having his 5th-year option decline, but before that, he wasn't consistent at all. So he's had one really good year, and he's like, oh, I want to be 10 million plus running back, a year running back on a multiple year contract. You can sort of see why the Raiders are holding out. And also, spoken about it's the last 2 podcasts actually as well. Like, there's just no point in paying running backs because they're going to get injured after 3. Once one knee injury happens, they're done, really. And the value's there, for other 7th round rookie. We've seen the likes of what San Francisco do, or what the Chiefs have done, where you can multiple guys, use them, 5-10, carries a game each. You're sorted. But it's just whether he compromises like with the like the Giants did with Saquon Barkley, where he took his 2 million bonus and a little bit more, and they'll revisit it next offseason, or do the Raiders actually rescind the tag, or just what happens there? That's the thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a running back position. He's obviously not going to get paid because he can't. No. He can only get that. He can only get a 1-year deal, basically. That's the rule after he's tagged now. They've gone past the deadline, but yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of talk from that Zoom call that the running backs did, that they all got told that Saquon was basically going to do this negotiation and he'd be in camp within a week. But on the same call, they said Josh Jacobs was like, I ain't going. I'm not reporting unless they pay me. So I'm not sure how it goes. I agree with you that it is kind of 1 year. I would be worried paying it. Well, I wouldn't pay any running back, but I'd be worried.
It's 10 million as well. It's quite a big cap hit.
Yeah. They're already committing to him for me. Like, that's a big cap hit for 1 year. I know it's not what he wants. He wants multi-years, which is completely understandable when you play a position where you get hit so much. But for me, I just feel like because he's going to lose game checks that eventually he'll turn up. But yeah, it could be the same situation you said, maybe a bit more of a bonus, like, oh, if we make the playoffs, it's another million or whatever. Because a lot of Saquon's bonuses that he got are very unlikely to be earned. Like he's never had 10 touchdowns in a season. And that's one of the bonuses. They could easily say to Josh Jacobs, like, X amount of receiving yards that he's never got, and just say, if you get it, great. It will count against the cap next year. We won't have to worry about it this year anyway. But yeah, I think he'll play, but I'm not sure on what sort of deal. But in terms of what the Raiders are, it's crazy, isn't it? It's like stars and scrubs, really. It's a little bit like the Rams in that sense,
Yes.
but they haven't got the Super Bowl first to boast for it. But yeah, it's weird because Devontae Adams is a good player. Jacoby Myers, they spent in free agency for a player that's very similar to the slot receiver they've got. And then the rest of the roster is pretty bad, especially secondary and the offensive line. So I think they're a team that are probably too good to be competing for the number one pick, but they'll be pretty close to it. I think they'll be a top 10 team in terms of the draft next year, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, this is what you can mention bringing in Jacoby Myers. What Josh Daniels now is doing is just getting his offense in. He's got his QB in Jimmy Garoppolo, who, you know, it just feels like his time in Denver already, doesn't it? Really, it's not going great at all. You know, moving on from Derek Carr to get Jimmy Garoppolo isn't an upgrade in my opinion. You know, I prefer Derek Carr. You know, he's got Myers. He's added another former Patriot in Jermaine Illuminor. They've got rid of Darren Waller and got Michael Mayer, who's a very New England style tight end, and Austin Hooper as well. I liked Mayer actually in the draft. He was actually my favorite. I watched all the tight ends because I was doing work on them because the Dolphins needed a tight end and didn't end up taking one at all. But so they didn't really mean much. But I did watch all of them. And my two standouts were Mayer and Sam Laporta, who's going to have a big role in the Detroit offense as well this year. But yeah, they drafted Mayer, Austin Hooper as well. As it's a two tight end set, which New England do a lot. We saw in his time last year in New England, they had John U. Smith and Hunter Henry, for example. Hunter Renfrow is one that I thought he'd do great in this offense because, you know, sort of like Julian Edelman style slot receiver, but just didn't last year. He had the worst of his career. So that's an interesting one. You mentioned Jacoby Myers being the slot receiver as well, really. The offense just doesn't really make any sense to me. It just seems like a mess. Like the defense as well. Like Patrick Graham, obviously, he's had good defenses. You know, in the some of the Giants, he was getting head coaching interviews, wasn't he? And now, you know, last year his defense was awful. The secondary was crap, 29th in passing defense. And they've added Marcus Peters, who gets the turnovers that they're looking for because they were last in the league in turnovers last year. So I can see where they're going from there. And they've added Marcus Epps as well, who was with the Eagles last year. But it's just like, well, yeah, what are you? You know, your rookie first round pick as well, Tyree Wilson. He's on the non-football injury list, so he's not going to play. You know, it's just, yeah. I mean, it makes sense keeping Chandler Jones for that reason because otherwise, you know. But it's just odd, isn't it? And it's very, like I said at the start of this, it's very much Josh McDaniels in Denver territory. It's just.
Yeah, and I think that Chandler Jones signing kind of sums it all up really, because what did he have in Arizona? It's kind of, it was good, but not consistent. And last year gets loads of sacks. And of course, the Raiders are the team that pays him loads of money after 1 year of sacks as he's getting older. And then he's gone to the Raiders. And he was awful last season, like awful. And he was like the highest paid defensive end in the league last season. I think that just sums it up. It's very typical Raiders, like spend money in the wrong places. Drafts have not gone well. I actually do agree with you. I like Michael Mayer. I actually think Tyree Wilson's a good draft pick as well. So hopefully they've turned that around. But yeah, the organization's in a bit of a mess. They've got a very nice stadium, but there's not much else going on at the moment. I actually do like Trevor Morig, who came out last year. Last year or 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago.
But now Jonathan Abrams gone as well. He gets more play time as well.
Yeah, Jonathan Abrams awful as well.
Yeah,
Travis Kelce.
He played a lot. He played a lot. Yeah,
he did. Yeah, Travis Kelce used to enjoy going against him. But yeah, it's strange. They got, like you said earlier, really good players in certain positions, and then just probably some of the worst units in others. Like I know you said earlier about Colton Miller being a good left tackle, which he is, but the other four people that are going to play with him are terrible. And I like Trevor Morig, and I don't think anyone else who's going to play in the secondary is going to be very good. So yeah, it's very strange. I did want to mention two more New England things. Brian Hoyer is the backup, which is the most New England thing of all time. And I bet you Philip Dorsett will play a lot of snaps at wide receiver. And that is also the most New England Josh McDaniels thing. So for me, he's probably one of the favourites to be fired, I think, in the season. Don't know if you agree, but I think he's not long for the job for me.
Yeah, when I was doing research yesterday afternoon, he's up there in the odds with actually, a few head coaches that we're either talking about today or tomorrow, in the next podcast as well, because it's very much NFC South coaches, obviously, Todd Bowles and Dennis Allen, and the West coaches as well. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of these teams are either really good or coaches can get fired, and by that was on that note, we'll switch over to the NFC, which the NFC West, the Niners are still big favourites, but each team are going to be much must watch this year for a variety of reasons. The Cardinals, obviously starting a new era, fired Cliff Kingsbury, Steve Keim left, in come former DC of the Eagles, Jonathan Gannon, and Monty Ossenfort as well as GM, who was with the Titans before. We're not expecting them to be good this year by any means. They got probably the worst roster in the league, but that's okay because they did that on purpose, really. I mean, Kyler Murray is not going to play at the start of the season, maybe not even at all, still recovering from the ACL he suffered at the end of last year. And, they started this as well by, they've let DeAndre Hopkins, Zach Allen, Byron Murphy walk in free agency to even bother signing anyone, really. It's very clearly a tank, isn't it, really?
Yeah, this is definitely the definition of a tank. Well, they let I've forgotten his name now, but Byron Murphy as well. They let go to, I think he went to the Vikings, and Byron Murphy was like a great secondary player for them, and it's just like you need to keep people like that, and they're just like, nah, we'll just let him walk and we'll just move Isaiah Simmons to safety and we'll just play Antonio Hamilton at corner. It's just like I just don't understand it, but it's definitely a tank. Definitely a tank.
Go on.
No, you go.
I was going to say they're playing Xavier Collins at edge rusher this year, purely on edge rusher as well, which I noticed in the preseason game. It's just like, I'm excited. It'd be interesting to see how Isaiah Simmons and him look in the defense, but they're two gadget players who have just not really excelled at anything in the NFL. It's just it's so interesting to see how they look different.
Yeah, well, it's very how Cardinals is it to take two linebackers in the first round, which you probably should never do, and then they have to move them both to other positions because they're both so bad at playing linebacker. That is like old Cardinals. Obviously, there's issues with the GM as well about off the field. Last year's GM, there's some kind of legal stuff going on, but that just sums up their reign. That front office is one of the worst that I've seen in terms of being a fan of the league. But their drafts, their signings, how much money they spent on old players. It's not been good. We'll talk about Kyler in a bit, but even some of the stuff that happened with his contract, obviously even letting that leak out, it's it was so badly run. I actually like the new GM they've got. He's done good things at the Titans, especially in terms of drafting injured players and making a career out of them and kind of finding gems in the later rounds. They had a great draft this year. They get the Texans first round pick. So the tank's on. They want the Texans to tank. They want them themselves to tank. But they've got the 22nd easiest schedule in the league. So a bottom quarter. So hard schedule, awful roster. I think it could be a 2-3 win team. And we'll probably talk about Kyler in a minute, but that depends how much he plays. But for me, if you look at it, it's such a hard schedule and their roster is pretty bad. I don't know who's getting sacks. I don't know who's stopping pass rushers, but it's a bad team, isn't it?
Well, it's going to be Xavier Collins and BJ Ojolari, who's a second-round rookie out of LSU. You've got they traded down with Houston, as you said before, to allow them to come up and get Will Anderson. They grabbed the extra first in next year's draft, obviously, and they still got the pick of tackles as well. So you can obviously they traded out and get a pick, and they added obviously Paris Johnson as well, 6th overall. But it's just it's Kyler. We'll talk about Kyler now. It's just if this team gets the one overall pick, what do they do him? Do they play him at all this year? It's because they're going to have their choice of Caleb Williams or Drake May, whoever you like, probably Caleb Williams, but whoever you like in the draft next year. It's they've paid Kyler Murray, obviously. And since they paid him, it's been a mess, really. It's just got worse and worse and worse since that happened. Obviously, we had the whole video games thing and, monitoring the hours with the tablet he spends. And it's just ever since then, it's just been a huge mess. And it's good to hit the reset button. And I mean, look, another player who can move as well. Just having that as Buda Baker. He's requested a trade. Just whether that actually happens, he's had a few good seasons. It's gone quiet recently, but again, at the trade deadline, if you've got a couple of wins and you want to trade away him, you probably get another pick for him. It's
well, I think they gave him a bit of a bonus restructure the other day for this season. But it would not shock you if you get to the trade deadline and someone's offering a second round pick and they're like, well, we're already tanking. Let's just grab another second round pick. In terms of Kyler Murray, so I'm on the betting podcast as well for Full 10 Yards, and common theme as mine is I'd like to welcome Kyler Murray to the Washington Commanders police next season. That's going to be the trade I think that happens. For me, they're going to have the first overall pick, whether it comes from them or the Texans, probably. And I think they're going to draft.
You've got that as well. So they're going to have 2 high draft picks. Yeah,
they could easily. I honestly just think they're just going to draft a quarterback, restart, make sense with the roster, new head coach, new GM, trade Kyler Murray. I don't care what people think about him. You'll get at least 1 first, if not 1 first, 2 seconds. Like that's just quarterback price. So, I think he's not long for the team. I do wonder if he plays this year. Like, does he want to play because he wasn't great last year, so he can get higher kind of trade package for a better team next year, or does he not want to play so he doesn't risk re-injury? I think he'll be interesting to watch. But if he plays, he could win them the odd game. So if you're betting like under, or if you think they're going to have the worst record in the league, maybe he can win them a few games. But if he doesn't play, I can't see them winning 3 games, to be honest, of how bad they are. But yeah, it could be Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. next year in the draft, which would be quite fun if you're a Cardinals fan.
I've got to be a great duo, that is. You go from what, Colt McCoy and Zach Pascal to it's a big upgrade,
there, aren't they?
but yeah, no, the Cardinals not expecting anything of them really. The Niners, we'll go to them now. One of the NFC title favourites, but they're coming towards the end of their Super Bowl window, I'd say. They obviously reached the NFC Championship last year, lost to Philly after Brock Purdy hurt the UCL in his elbow. The team's absolutely loaded. It was last year, it is this year too. Obviously, the fairy tale story has gone from third string QB to Mr. Irrelevant to somehow playing in the league and helping the team get to the NFC Championship game. And that was all well and good. And then he hurt his elbow. Then it's like, what's going to go on? His recovery's gone better than expected. He's obviously taken the majority of the steps in training camp, but there's still this QB battle, and it looks like it's a 3-way battle as well between obviously Brock Purdy, who was great at the end of last year, but obviously they've invested a lot into Trey Lance, and then also they've thrown Sam Darnold into the mix as well. It's just like, in the preseason game, Trey Lance was bad. He got sacked. He got sacked 4 times. His fault. Put Darnold in. He didn't get sacked once. So it's not. It's just like it's just like and also Darnold's average depth of target was 5 yards higher than Lance's as well. Darnold's was 13. They played similar snaps. The number of snaps. It was 13 yards average depth of target, and Lance's was 8. So he was pushing the ball. Obviously, that's what Sam Darnold did. But it's like pushing the ball downfield. But it's just. It's an interesting story to watch, but it's just who actually plays, because they've not got anything out. It's going to be Purdy, I think, but
yeah, it's 49ers all over, and they've just. I know Jimmy was a starter for a while, but it's just been like this for years. It feels like who's going to play. Some of that was because Jimmy was always injured. It wasn't like a battle, but who's going to play? They're going to be healthy. Can Kyle just lift a bad quarterback again to a good position? I know they did get to the Super Bowl, obviously, with the one that we won in Miami, but I am a firm believer. Personally, about obviously it's the hardest position in sport. It's the kind of most important position in sport, quarterback. I personally just don't think you're ever going to win a Super Bowl in the modern day era of how good the current crop is of quarterbacks with a bottom half QB. Definitely not bottom 10. And I know people love Purdy, but if you watch the film and don't concentrate on the wins because he won so many games back to back. If you look at how he actually played. I don't rate him personally. I will say the difference between him and Jimmy is he'll throw the ball deep down the field, which really helps their offense because it means they can run the ball a bit better, because obviously if you're chucking the ball over people's heads, they've got to kind of set back and helps you run. So I think that does help them. But if you go back and watch some of the throws, especially in the intermediate game, it's like, oh my God, he should be having 2-3 picks a game at times. So I'm not a believer, but it looks like he's going to play. Trey Lance maybe gets traded. And did you hear the Darnold comments where Shanahan was like, he could be the next Vince Young?
Yeah.
I was just like, Kyle, come on. He loves his crazy statements, but yeah.
Well, Steve Young chipped in on that as well. He said, he was playing along with it as well afterwards. It's just like, any QB has stepped into that system has won, games, some to different degrees. History tells us that it will happen, especially with what I think is the second best roster in the league. It's just to win the actual Super Bowl. Like, I agree with your point there. And also all this is going on whilst Kirk Cousins. There's all these rumors that they're going for Kirk Cousins next offseason. Because
if they got Kirk Cousins this year, I'd say they'd win the NFC. I'm a Kirk believer. So
that's the thing. It's like everyone's talking about there's going to be like a sort of a bidding war between McVay and Shanahan for Kirk Cousins as well, like because they're like the perfect QB for. Obviously, he's been in the system before in Washington. Like it's like he's like a perfect QB for that system. It's like they're talking about that, and it's just like I think until they either win a Super Bowl, it's going to be like this forever. Just who plays for San Francisco, right?
Well, they've actually only won 10 games twice under Kyle Shanahan. Like they are basically like win
Up and
loads of
down,
games,
isn't it? Yeah.
get to the Super Bowl or the NFC title game, or they're like, oh, it's a terrible season, everyone's injured, like quarterback didn't work, the offense stalled out. Like it is very kind of boom bust with them. I don't know what you think about Purdy. Obviously, you watched games last year, and you're a fan of the draft as well. Did you think he played better maybe than I did, and you think he's got a chance to win them a lot of games?
See, it's like I watched a bit when I did my QB ranking, and I think I had him between Gino and Jimmy. So it's just like that kind of like game manager. He's like a worse Kirk Cousins kind of. Like people think that's sort of the comp you could use, which makes sense. But I think I don't think he's not gonna. He doesn't wow me.
And he could get injured again. Like that's a hard injury.
It's just like it's QB elbows are hit all the time because that's it's the throw motion. You saw it with Brady; he's been hit on the elbow so many times. It's like it's just I don't know. I'm not sold on him, which is why I'm sort of I don't know. I think maybe they could go for. I mean, Charlie and his in the guide, he was basically for me saying I think it's gonna be Lance. And I'm just like it's just I don't know, but we'll see. But it's just difficult, really.
Yeah, I think they've got to trade Trey Lance as well, just to make
get some value out of him because he's not.
Let the room be a little kind of have a bit of air to breathe and be like, right, Purdy, your starter, Sam, you're the backup, and not have this 3 quarterback issue constantly. Like, just kind of settle it down a little bit. But yeah, I quite like Trey Lance coming out, and obviously hasn't played well, but we'll see. Like you said though, rest of the offense, it's a joke, isn't it? Brandon Ayuk, Debo, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey, and Elijah Mitchell will start for at least half the teams probably in the league, you'd say. So yeah, the offense is stacked. I'm a little bit worried. We got in our notes about the offensive line. I'm a little bit worried about them, same as you, I think. But the weapons are nuts. So yeah, if Purdy doesn't win games with this offense, like impossible. No, like, do you know what I mean? He's not going to win with any offense. So
it's like they've lost. Obviously, they've lost Mike McGlinchey on the offensive line. Defensive line, they lost obviously Amenahu, which I mentioned before, and Samson Ebukam as well, who's gone to the Colts, I believe. It's just they've hoping to get some sacks out of the second year player Drake Jackson at USC. And also Clelin Ferrell, they're giving him a chance to rebuild his career, which is interesting to see how that goes. Apparently, he's had quite a good camp, which is what I've read. So that'll be interesting to see. But I mean, look, I think they could have won a Super Bowl last year had they got through that game. I think they're so good. It's just different game plan for every week. It's just whether it's McCaffrey, Debo, Brandon Ayuk, who a lot of people are saying is going to have a massive season this year. There's been a lot of talk about breakout year. In the draft, he was like, what was it 2021 or 2020 of Brandon Ayuk? Is what is
for the draft? He was 2020.
2020, yeah. So I did like an article which is like a man crush list, and on that it was like Jonathan Taylor, who's had a great year, great career. It was Brandon Ayuk. I had Jalen Johnson from the Bears, obviously because he wasn't talked about a lot, but I still really liked him as well. There's a couple of people, and Anton Winfield as well, who obviously none of them really got drafted high, but I was like, I like these guys, and they've all had pretty decent careers. But for me, Ayuk was the one where I was like, yes, I like him. And yeah, look, it's very much with them. If you can stay healthy, I mean, they're going to win games. But it's very much even if you lose a couple of players, they've got so much depth. It's like Philly, where they've added Javon Hargrave. I'm not even talking about that.
Javon Hargrave is now starting next to Eric Armstead, which is nuts. And I think the other thing as well,
and you've got Nick Bosa as well. It's just like,
when does Nick Bosa's deal get done though? Isn't it similar to the Chris Jones situation?
Yeah.
He wants to be the highest paid, I believe, in his position.
But he deserves that though. Like
which is even more. That's even more than defensive tackle, right? So I agree with you. He deserves it, but it's just when do they give it to him? He's often injured as well, but that between Ferrell, Taco Charlton, Drake Jackson, someone will get 7 sacks because 49ers find pressures for average pass rushers. They're always deep, aren't they? And it'll probably happen again. But yeah, we'll see when Bosa's deal gets done. But yeah, best linebacker in football, Fred Warner probably as well. Good safety combo. Gibson Senior is actually
corners
really
aren't too bad either.
Yeah, Travaris Ward hit and miss, but very good against big receivers, which obviously they have in the division. So yeah, roster's pretty stacked, but it just depends about the most important position in football, doesn't it? So
exactly, there we go. But for me, focus of the division, and I could see him getting to the Super Bowl again if they look like they did last year.
Yeah. By the way, they've got the 5th easiest schedule in the league as well.
Oh, there you are. 13 wins incoming. Yes, it'll happen. Going to a team that were in the Super Bowl, 2 years ago or 18 months ago or so. The Rams, they're a shadow of the team that won Super Bowl 56. Their aggressive strategy of going basically all in by trading draft picks for proven veteran players worked. But I mean, it's put a team in a situation where they have Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, and not much else. We mentioned it earlier. The rest of the roster is just unproven guys. I gave this stat to you earlier. Of the 88 players that are currently on the roster, 71 of those are either day 3 draft picks or went undrafted, which is nuts because that's a good 90% of your roster is just either day 3 guys or undrafted free agents. The secondary is entirely them. It's just the superstars are great, but all 3 of them missed time of injury last year, which is why they sucked, and they've lost key players as well. And it's just you have to question what's next because look, Sean McVay is an excellent head coach. There's no doubt in that. Yeah. But yeah, is making a success with this group he has right now too much of an ask? And also his heart. It doesn't look like his heart's really in it at the moment anyway because he was flirting with the Amazon gig. He's got a baby on the way as well. So that there's a lot of things. It's just there'll be a lot of talk that you might hand over the coaching whilst the baby gets delivered, which is obviously what obviously Mike Vrabel's done that to his other people in pre-season as well. But it's just and Aaron Donald as well. He's flirting with retirement too. It's just is this the beginning of the end of this team? It looks like it really is because look, if one of them if they get hurt again, they could get the overall pick.
Yeah, which I'm sure they would enjoy because that'd be nice to have Caleb Williams learning from
actually having a pick as well, because obviously this is because the window's gone. They've actually got draft picks now. Last year they had a second, which is the first time I've had a second in a long time. This year they got a first. It's just look, Caleb Williams staying in California would be great because that's where for the Rams, which are obviously the Rams and Chargers don't make near enough as much money as for example the Raiders would if they were in LA, for example, right? But it's just that's good for them. You can sort of see why they're doing it. But will McVay be there? Will Aaron Donald be there? It's just will Matt Stafford be there? He's been hurt the last 2 years. It's just
yeah, I think there's a chance Stafford and Donald probably won't be there. Donald's a difficult one because he's talked about retirement a few times, but the money he's got next year, he's owed $34 million next year. Will you retire and you basically half of that gets knocked off? I'm not sure, but yeah, Stafford, his dead money next year is $37 million. So they'll need him to retire to save some cash. But yeah, it's a difficult team because I'm a little bit higher on McVay, kind of being into it now. It feels like everything I read from Jordan Rodriguez, who did a really good podcast on Athletics.
Yeah, the play callers is all well. That's such a good
it is, yeah. And she was talking a lot about how he's remotivated. Obviously, they've replaced the whole staff. Apparently, they've re-energized a lot, and he's ready to go again after a tough year. So, yeah, he's such a great coach. I think they could win more games than people think. I don't think it'll be good enough. Could they sneak the last place in the playoffs? Maybe if all 3 stay healthy. But I think they'll win more games than people think just because of how good they are. How good he is, sorry. And then next year, they've got $48 million at the moment in cap savings for next year. And they can easily trade and or cut and or restructure Stafford and Donald. Obviously, especially Donald being a good player, they'll get stuff for him. So, yeah, I don't know. I think they're just kind of rely on the offense because the defense is a bit of a disaster. It's the youngest defense in the league. I think I read that 3/4 of the roster are rookies as well that are currently in camp. I think it's like 68%.
They added so many undrafted guys. It's like the list
Yeah.
is. I was looking yesterday. The list is just like obviously I said about most of them being undrafted, but most of them are this year's. It's impossible just to. It's just you don't think you'll ever see anything like this. You look at it, you're actually amazed because it's
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, you basically look at it, and it's like the front office have just said, we want to keep McVay, so let's give the offense enough to be good, and we'll just completely sacrifice the defense. Basically, that if you look at it on paper, that's what it tells you. Because the offense, I know wide receiver 2's been an issue for years for them, but the offensive line's probably got better. Like Noteboom played quite well last year. Steve Avila I really liked in the draft,
Yes.
second round pick. Right tackle's good for a right tackle. Center was good last year. The right guard position's a bit of a disaster, but and they paid Tyler Higbee as well. So the offense will probably be good as long as Stafford and Kupp are healthy. But the defense is just a bit of a disaster. And they've probably got maybe two future head coaches like Mike LaFleur. Everyone's raving about Mike LaFleur again, and just saying that last year in the Jets, just the quarterback was what killed him. And he's a good play caller. And then Raheem Morris has had loads of interviews to be a head coach.
Yeah.
So I think the staff's great. It's just the defensive names are pretty bad. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. They've got 5 wins halfway through the season, and all of a sudden they trade a first-round pick for Brian Burns, like they tried to do last year, and they just go again. It would not surprise me. They're a pretty aggressive team, aren't they? So
yeah, I mean, at the very start, I was saying like, I don't think they will suck, but like if one of them goes down, that's what I'm saying. Like if they get hurt like they did last year, then it could entirely happen. Like because all 3 of their key players did last year, and obviously, I mean Donald played more than Kupp and Stafford did, but it's still that's the one. I mean, if Aaron Donald went out that defense last year, then they would have been like,
they're gonna have to score. They're gonna have to score 30 points to win games, aren't they? That's just the truth. Like,
I mean, they can do it.
Good Aaron Donald is.
I guess they got the run game to do it as well. It's just like they can create something with Cam Akers and the flurry of backs they've got there. It's just with I mean, look, I've got the bottom notes here. It's just I'm really interested to see how it looks. Could they surprise or will they stink? I think it's just one of the it'd be one of the two. And you mentioned Steve Avila, Byron Young. Looks like he could play quite a lot as well on the edge for them. Another rookie. It's just. I mean, look, I also got as a receiver as a strong point on their roster. I wrote here, and we've just said that it's not great. That just shows how it is. But
that's just Cooper. How good Cooper Kupp is.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
But yeah,
it's just
they've got the easiest schedule they've ever had since McVay's been the coach. But that's obviously going to happen when you were awful last season.
Yeah,
so.
when you've got a 4th place schedule, you're going to have a 4th place schedule. It's like
they'll probably beat a couple of good teams, won't they? There'll be games when they beat a good team because the offense goes crazy and everyone will be shocked. But I agree with you. I think throughout the course of the season, especially if the older guys get injured, then
Arizona's a win or two. That's in division. It's a win or two.
They'll beat the 49ers. They'll beat the 49ers once because that's McVay.
It happens. Like, they trade wins between each other. It's like Seattle and San Francisco. San Francisco normally win that game. It's just, they've got the traditional rivalries in this division with all the coaches that they just sort of they beat each other all the time. But we'll finish this podcast now with the Seahawks. One of my favorite stories from last season with the emergence of Geno Smith, who took his first starting job in 9 years and absolutely ran with it. It's just like obviously he had that game when Eli was benched in like 2017. It was just one of the weirdest things that's ever happened in the NFL with Ben McAdoo. But it's he had that one game, but since then we've hardly seen him for since the last time you saw him I was like 10 I think is before that. So it's just like wow,
and he got his jaw broken as well by a teammate when he was the last star. So that's his career. His career is pretty crazy.
Obviously, they traded away Russ last year, and they didn't look like they were going to be anywhere near the playoffs for a little while. But thanks to excellent play from Geno stepping in and looking at one of the best quarterbacks in the league last season, and obviously hitting on the majority of their draft picks too last year right away. They're hopeful to have a offensive tackle duo for the future in Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas. Star running back that looks like it anyway with Kenneth Walker, who was another guy I was really high on last year. I predicted him. Our predictions for the guy last year as a rookie of the year. So I mean, I was the only one that did that, so I was quite happy with that. But I mean, defense. That's what I want to talk about because it's very reminiscent of what the Legion of Boom, because they've just got so many young defensive backs. It's what Pete Carroll and John Schneider did in the early teens when obviously they had their, but they got to a couple of Super Bowls. Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant. They've added Devon Witherspoon, 5th overall this year as well. It's and they've got Bobby Wagner back. Obviously, he's a linebacker, but it's just like he was key for so many years for Seattle. You're just like, this defense can be, and you got Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams. Like, this defense can be really good this year.
Yeah, and Pete Carroll's really good at defensive schemes as well, especially against stopping the run. So I would guarantee their secondary is going to be great. They're going to stop the run. Can they rush the passer?
But yeah, you got Uchenna Nwosu and Boya Mafe, right? It's like
and Draymond Jones as well. Obviously came over in free agency from Denver.
Of course, from Denver.
Inside, outside versatility. But yeah, I don't know about the pass rush. So I'm not quite going Legion of Boom just because of how good they could get after the pass, especially like Michael Bennett and stuff. But that secondary is good. Even Julian Love, who they signed for the Giants, really good safety last year. And he might not even be the starting safety. He could be their third safety who plays in the slot nickel sometimes when teams have like 3 wide receivers on the field. So, secondary's great. Love the Witherspoon pick. Love, to be honest, ever since they traded Russ, things have looked incredible for them, like how good the team is. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think the defense would be great. I think it fits the division as well because I think it can stop the run. Cardinals are going to have to run the ball because the quarterback's going to be Clayton Tune. 49ers run the ball forever. That's just what they do. Sean McVay runs the ball probably more than he should at times on 1st and 2nd down. So, yeah, I think the defense is going to be really good in the NFC because there's a lot of teams in the NFC that want to run the ball down your throat. So, and I agree with you. I think the secondary's great. I don't like Jamal Adams that much, but that's just a trade bias I had from that trade.
With him, it's like he's a very much love it or hate it player because he does some things great, but it's just you don't really want that out of a safety either. He's like a
linebacker.
Yeah, he plays in the box a lot. So it's just like you often have to have another guy back there, but it's like, which is what Quandre Diggs is good at, obviously, because he can pick up basically what Jamal Adams has done, and obviously he gets a lot of turnovers. So there's that too.
Do you like Jordan Brooks? Because I was a big fan of him coming out of the draft, and I thought he played really well in his rookie year. He got injured last year, didn't he? But what do you think of him?
Well, he's one of those guys. It's like, because he was another. I mean, look, he's better than LJ Collier, that kind of thing. Like, those picks, they had years of just picking random defensive guys at the end of the first round that just weren't expected to be first round picks, whatever. And obviously, some were hit, some were miss. I don't know. It's just in that scheme, it's gonna be great. Like it's just you've got lots of opportunity, and also like even if you're playing dime defense or whatever, you've still got a lot of opportunity to play and mixing it up and stuff. They'll be creative. We'll see what happens, but yeah, that hopefully should be good. I want to get onto the offense, and I mean, look at the talent receiver. You got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. You're adding Jackson Smith and Jigba. You got 2 awesome route runners, and then you got the speed and massive catch radius of DK Metcalf. You're just like, that's only going to help Geno Smith as well because you've got 3 very different receivers to each other, but 3 ones who can will get open or win or basically win one-on-one battles really. It's just like they've added at receiver, the offensive line's decent. I hope this team, if Geno plays well, they could surprise, and I think they could even win the division if San Francisco have a couple. I'm really high on them.
Yeah, I agree. We on the betting show, obviously you don't always just pick like Chiefs to win the division because the odds aren't going to be great. So the pick that a couple of us gave out was Seahawks to win their division for this division, and for the Seahawks best bet, just because they're quite far behind on the odds. I think their win total was only 9.5, by the way, or 8.5. It was 8.5 or 9.5, but
that's mad.
They feel like a 10-win team. Schedule's pretty good, obviously, because they didn't win the division last year. I agree with you. Good wide receiver trio. Ty Lockett is getting old, but still seems to be able to do it downfield all the time. Jackson Smith and Jigba was kind of the pick that think if you do Madden, if you play on Madden, you're like you get to that point, and you're like, right, let's do the real draft. I'm going to be the Seahawks. Oh, we need a slot receiver.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone thought Pete Carroll would pull the trigger. A guy that doesn't really care about offense as much, loves to run the ball. Obviously drafted another bloody running back in the second round, but
yeah,
they went for it and they got JSN, which I thought was a great pick. So yeah, I think the offense is good. I love Charles Cross, left tackle. He was amazing last year. And Abraham Lucas coming through 6th or 7th round, but he was a late round pick, and he was really, really good last year. I'm a bit worried about the interior offensive line, but I feel like that's your worry. You can kind of scheme around it. So the offense should be great. But you did have Geno Smith ranked next to Purdy, so you can't be singing any Geno praise on this pod after ranking them. So
my thing was, he obviously when defenses found out what they were doing, his play went down. But after the sort of Munich game, he wasn't the same guy. He was still, he went from really good to game manager. But I still think it's like he still played really well. But it's just that he didn't after the game against the Bucks in Munich. It was just like, but I mean, look, he's still really good. And if he can play like he did, even at the end of last year, I think they're still going to be really good. If he plays like he did at the start of last year, then they'll be really good.
Yeah, I think the offensive line, they're so bad in the interior. He was constantly just pressure up the middle. I think that was more to the reason, to be honest, than him. But yeah, Anthony Bradford, I quite liked in the draft. We'll see if he actually starts. But yeah, I don't know. I think Geno's a bit better. And I think he's been talking a lot about now he's the starter. Obviously, he gets the full camp because there was a bit of a battle last year at the start with him and Locke. He's been talking about how he feels more comfortable and they're going to throw the ball down the field more. Now they've got 3 receivers. So we'll see if that's true. But yeah, it's quite funny when you look, by the way, the running back room as well. You've got those 2 second-round running backs that people...
I was going to say they drafted a couple, didn't they? It's just... Yeah.
That's just Pete Carroll, isn't it? Run the ball, many running backs I can get. He absolutely loves running the ball. And I know...
Especially high as well. Drafting running back in the second round is quite high. Just like...
Yeah, well, Bijan's a completely different story, isn't he? But he basically drafted... I think Kenneth Walker was the first running back that went in that other draft. I don't know if him or was it Breece Hall maybe, but he was first or second. Obviously, Chardonnay
they were second round. Yeah, it's like the 3 second round backs in 2 years. Yeah.
And then they added Kenny McIntosh in round 7, who I love as a pass catching running back out of Georgia. So yeah, they're going to run the ball a lot. I think Geno probably will run it a bit more as well. But yeah, the roster's just absolutely stacked, and it's a head coach in there that just wins football games. So I think they're going to be a very, very a very good team. I'm looking forward to 49ers Seahawks games after the playoffs because I think Seahawks probably want a bit of revenge after that.
Yeah, and I did a thing for the guide. It was the most the games to watch basically, and the one right at the end of the year for me is like, yes, that's going to be great to watch. I picked that on my list. So yeah, sort of back to that point already. But anyway, Liam, thank you for coming on. It's been nice to have you on. It's really hot in here, so it's been sort of just getting through this podcast. But it's a great chat here, sort of just breaking down these divisions, and there's a lot to talk about. We went on tangents a lot of the time. There's a lot to talk about with these teams already, and it's just hope that let's just hope that what we've said happens at the end of the season, or will Seattle win the division? We'll come back and we'll clip it and we'll post it on social media and say, we called it right here, that kind of thing. It's just let's just hope that these little bits of wisdom have some relevance towards the end of the season. But anyway, thank you for coming on, mate. It's been great to have you on.
Yeah, perfect, mate. Thanks for having me on. And anyone listening, remember to go check out the 14 Yards Betting Podcast. We'll be back next week. I think we're doing awards picks next week. Yeah. So go check that pod out because we have some fun over there. So yeah, it's a good listen.
Yeah, it's on the same feed as well. So you'll come across it eventually because it will just pop up on your inbox at some point. But yeah, that's it for this podcast. We'll be back at the end of the week, probably about Sunday or maybe Monday with Sean for the AFC South to round up these division preview podcasts. Again, thank you, Liam, for coming on. This has been the 410 Yards NFL podcast, and we'll see you next time.